Hello and welcome to another Intro to Programming tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to be looking at the flowcharts and the syntax for the Visual Basic loops. When we talk about loops in the other tutorial, as I talked about, is the process where you pretty much go over something multiple times until a certain condition is met. For example, here you can see that we are entering a process, and this process is followed by a condition. And if this condition is false, we go back into the process. Now this is an example of a loop that keeps looping as long as the condition is false, and it terminates when the condition is true. This is basically the working behavior of the do until loop. But the idea behind a loop is that there is a decision making, and in the decision making there is a yes and no. Just like an if condition, there is a true and false, and there is a way to go back into the process and keep processing. Now let's have a look at the while loop here. This is a typical syntax of a while loop. While followed by the condition. Then you have a bunch of statements that will only execute as long as the condition is true. If the condition is false, you will going to right away jump to end while. Now here is the flowchart. We enter and we have a condition to check. If a condition is true, we have statements to process, and it will going to go back and check the condition again. If the condition remains true, it will going to come back and process these instructions and go back and check the condition again. It will only terminate when the condition is false. So anytime you want to do the repeated tasks, you are going to use a loop. It's up to you which one of the loops you want to use. Now for example, here we have the loop that I just shared with you in slide number 2, which is the logic, which was very similar, except for the fact that that was a loop that will keep looping if the condition is false. But here we have a do while loop where the condition is placed after the statement, as compared to the while loop where the condition is placed before the statements. So if the condition comes before the statement, it's a precondition loop. If the condition comes after the statement, it's a post-condition loop. Now if the loop terminates when the condition is false, this will going to be the kind of a do while loop, and it keeps looping as long as the condition is true. On the contrary, the do until loop, that's why in the syntax we have both do while loop and do until loop. The do until loop is a post-condition loop that keeps looping as long as the condition is false, and it terminates when the condition is true. So this is the flowchart for drawing. It's a very similar flowchart. If you notice, they're exactly the same flowcharts except for the wordings or labelings that are being used. And the last of the loops is the for loop, which keeps looping when the condition is true. A great choice for a count control loop. That means the loop for which you know as to how many times the loop will going to execute. So here we check the condition. If the condition is true, we execute the statements, and then it goes back and checks the condition again. As long as the condition remains true, it keeps looping, and it terminates when the condition becomes false. Now as far as the syntax of the for loop is concerned, slightly different. Since it's a count control loop, therefore we have a counter, and the counter has a starting point and an ending point. So let's say if I have a counter that needs to run from 1 through 10. So it will going to automatically run 1 through 10 and will automatically increment itself by 1. If I need to increment it by more than 1, then I have to use this step idea. So let's say if I want to skip 2 and I'm starting with 1, the next number I want to print is 3, the next number I want to print is 5. So I'm going to say, okay, step 2. If I want to go backwards, I will say step minus 1, or step minus 2, or step minus 3. So that's where the step is used. Step is not used if you're only incrementing by 1. So these are the syntaxes and the flowcharts for the loops. In the next tutorial, we'll actually be looking at the examples where you will going to be coding these ideas using Visual Basic loops. Thank you for watching this tutorial. Have a nice day. Thank you.